What does it take to create something that never existed before? What does it take to challenge the status quo? What does it take to change the world? This is the Swell Podcast. We're passionate about the seed of an idea and how it swells into a movement. Take a journey with us as we seek the answers to those three questions through the stories of thought leaders, world builders, game changers, disruptors, and other pleasantly rebellious humans who've ventured out into the unknown on a personal journey to do something novel, innovative, creative, or disruptive. In today's episode, we chat with Brent Alvord, co-founder and CEO of Mighty Labs, who are on a mission to align entire organizations, where not only is the right work happening to drive important objectives, but also that everyone is aware of what's happening around them and why, and that every person understands how their work impacts the organization and feels purpose and meaning in that work. We chat with Brent, a self-proclaimed purpose nerd, about the idea of purpose, alignment, and how he and the team at Mighty Labs are delivering on Mighty's mission. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast, sign up to our newsletter at theswellpod.com, and get in on the conversation through all of the major socials at The Swell Pod. Our first season is made in partnership with Kiln. Kiln provides flex office space solutions for teams and individuals. Their all-inclusive set of amenities helps startups, creatives, and entrepreneurs alike get work done. Learn more about Kiln at kiln.co. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoy.
I'm gonna just jump around a couple of things here. Josh, if you could give us an intro about what Swell does to Brent, and then that gives Brent just some time to share your backstory really about what this company does, right? And then we might kind of go into a little bit about what motivates you and why this problem. Why did you seek out this problem to solve? But yeah, Josh.
So the Swell Creative, we look at the experience of change, the moments of change within organizations, cultural, strategic, brand. When companies are going through these pivotal change moments, we look at it from a human-centered approach and how we can create the actual connected experience from current behaviors to future behaviors that match, I think, the ideal change that the company wants to see. So a lot of what we do is cultivating the touch points. So we build the strategy for it, but then we cultivate and create the touch points along that journey. So that can be pretty much anything creative. It can be experiential. It can be content. It can be rituals, symbols, stuff like that. But we build that cohesive, connected journey towards change.
Interesting. So you advise companies on sounds like a broad array of things.
Yeah. It's
but focused on kind of internal culture. Is that what you would, I guess, kind of center it around? Yeah,
that's been our work so far, is a lot of culture work. So some of our previous clients, like new CEOs, come in and they're changing the purpose, their mission, and their values of the company, and so that comes with new behaviors, new just different ways of working. And so we kind of go in, we do deep discovery, customer empathy. We start to really understand, I think, what's at the core of the company, what needs to change. And yeah, we build a strategy with the client and make suggestions and present ultimately what is that change journey.
I think that's great. I think I'm a bit of a purpose nerd.
Yeah.
Myself, like it's actually one of the real driving, I think, forces behind why I started Mighty. It may not make perfect sense to you if you see our product today, but I believe this is a very long-term play around kind of what the future of an organization looks like. And to me, it's the future really is one where an individual's purpose is manifest in a really meaningful way through the work they do. The really challenging thing for organizations is not just how to capture that, but how to make sure that work that's happening, that is ideally like a person's life's work, is also in alignment with the value that needs to be created for an organization. And that kind of connection, that kind of deep connection between the individual and the organization is, I think, really hard to channel. And so, but I think the unifying kind of theory, if you will, it is one that's all around purpose. And I think if I think many organizations, don't think maybe as deeply as they should around like what their purpose really is. And I think if they can nail that, so many things sort of fall out from there. I talk to organizations a lot around whether it's a consumer company, looking at expanding into new product lines, or a software company looking at a new feature. Almost every decision that I think, needs to be made can be and should be kind of checked against that purpose and that mission. And it's sort of this like self-healing kind of course correction, I think is the role that purpose should have in a person's life, at the individual level, and in an organization's life.
Yeah. Well, and that's so interesting, because I think that's where I find a strong connection. Actually, what's really interesting to what I saw, at least from my brief look into Mighty Labs. And I think at the root of what we're trying to do, we look at change, not as something that's, I guess, prescribed, but something that's believed. And, taking kind of like this different approach to change management, to be, kind of go from like this idea of a bulldozer plowing through your organization to more of a seed that's planted deeply within the individual. And I think that's really what we're striving for. And so when I saw Mighty Labs and I saw things like, personal timelines and how individual work connects back up to the overarching goals and the vision of the company. And that's kind of, I think I see Mighty Labs, and if I'm wrong, tell me, but I see Mighty Labs as being that connection, as you mentioned, right, to that individual finding the purpose in their work, I guess, and aligning back to that company. And I was personally connected to that. But yeah, tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me all about Mighty Labs, and tell me, tell me what
so. I
problem
mean,
you're
that's
trying to solve.
yeah, I hope so. That's really where we want to go. Is we think that I think the best ideas, the knowledge, and the work of an organization should be connected through more than serendipity. That I think that a person should understand how their work matters. It's been a long journey, honestly. Like where we started was a little bit in a different area, which was kind of trying to build a product that could align individuals to work that they found meaningful inside of an organization, big organizations. What we discovered, I think, in talking to a lot of organizations is that they already don't understand what work is happening inside the organization and where value is being created and how value is being created by people or teams or groups. And introducing any sort of staffing uncertainty on top of that was challenging for folks. So this concept of alignment, I think, first has to start with like how value is being created in an organization today. And if you can start to really capture those kind of vectors of value and energy within an organization, then you can kind of start to channel it in new and interesting ways. And so we almost kind of started too far out here and needed to back up and find those kind of vectors of value first, understand how that value is aligned, that work is aligned to value creation. And if you can do that successfully, then you can start to find new and creative ways to channel that energy of people and teams in ways that augment value. So it's been a journey. I think where we are now is, I think, finally figuring out how to measure that value, measure the energy being kind of deployed against certain types of work, capture the themes of work happening in an organization. And but the long-term kind of vision has always remained the same, which is really, really deeply align individuals and the organization in really meaningful ways.
Yeah, that's great. Sorry, Josh, go on.
No, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I don't know whether that's something you include in your kind of your elevator pitch as you talk to new customers, or whether you just hone in on
you can't talk to like I tried like when I first started, you know, I mean, I think understanding product marketing is very different than where I started, as you can imagine with my background. Like,
yeah,
you can't sell religion, you know, to an organization. You have to solve a real problem, and you know, you can sell against a problem and deliver religion later, maybe, but like, you know, you can something very tangible, very tactical. They've got to feel it, want it, be screaming about it, and then the product can kind of evolve to achieve different types of purpose, I think.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And so today, can you just remind us then, what is your pitch today with the platform that you have in I think it's more than beta, right? You're actually, you know, you got customers using the product. What is your kind of 60-second thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about understanding where an organization's energy is focused, where teams and groups within particularly product and engineering, where they're focused. I think the challenge with alignment these days is that teams are highly dynamic, super cross-functional. Work is buried in layers of tools that are great at the team level. Like they really help organize and, you know, manage projects. But those tools really are disconnected from each other, and they're disconnected kind of through the organization. You have pretty good visibility at the team level of what work is happening and why and what the priorities are. But once you get to kind of senior manager, director, VP level, it really breaks down. There's really no kind of 20, 30,000 foot view of what's happening in my organization, like where teams are focused. And so the way they solve this today is through a lot of manual work, spreadsheets, Google Docs, slide decks, and a lot of meetings to understand, you know, are we focused on the right work? How are things progressing? Are teams kind of scattered on different types of initiatives, or, you know, how focused are we? And does that focus of our organization today match what we need to be focused on? So we give that glimpse into an organization's focus, like where their energy is being deployed today, and enable leadership to really, I think, course correct a lot faster.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. So, and so it sounds like, I mean, this platform could be great for any size company, but certainly for the corporate that has hundreds of teams. Yeah, and you know, most of these teams are using Agile. Therefore, they probably choose their own tools. So they probably don't just have Jira, right? They have Rally, they have dozens of different tools. And therefore, you're really trying to solve that problem of the visibility is very difficult across all those teams, because they're even using different tools. So I saw a dashboard, I think a dashboard that had lots of different views of teams and teams of teams, and just a kind of a sense of kind of like where they're focused, right? Where their time is actually being spent. What type of reactions are you getting from people, positive and also negative? Like, you know, do they feel like they're being watched like Big Brother? Maybe they're working on innovation in the background, but they don't really want people to know that because maybe it doesn't align to the current projects. I don't know. Just tell me what the sentiments you're getting, both positive and constructive.
Yeah, look, I think. First of all, I think tooling at the team level, you know, can be improved on the margins, but I think tooling at the executive level is really broken. There's a lot of like BI tools out there, but we're talking about like the actual work that's happening. And, a lot of it is how you frame, we're not monitoring anybody. We're calculating energy, right? Proprietary algorithms that go in and understand the kind of per system, what it means to be, working on something. And then we find the themes of that work that are happening across systems. And you can search at the individual level, but the way that you try to frame it is, through a concept of recognition and value creation, not one of monitoring. I mean, I think organizations need to be more transparent about how value is being created, not less. And I think if you can create that kind of layer of visibility that bridges teams and work and effort that's happening in an organization, I think engagement increases because people understand kind of how their work ties into the bigger view of an organization and the organization's purpose. I think they get recognized more easily for their contributions. I think that the company just operates better.
Yeah.
It's very easy. These teams, it's very easy. I mean, you mentioned Agile, you mentioned these kind of, remote world distributed teams, really fractured tooling. There's, it's very easy in that scenario, like in the modern world, to get kind of distracted or kind of veer into waters that don't create the value that should be the focus, right? And so I think that it's incumbent upon an individual and it's incumbent upon the organization to work hard as like constant focus. That focus on purpose is hard to do because you get pulled in so many different directions. So
yeah, I get that sense. So so it isn't just looking at kind of where people are spending their time, though. It's actually their sentiment.
Yeah,
as well.
Time is just one minor factor of it.
So it's more about the sentiment of their, you say energy level. Like what can you talk us through a kind of an example of whether it's a leader or a typical employee using your tool and what insights it gives them around kind of the energy level or the sentiment, just to bring that to life?
Yeah, sentiment's the wrong word. The way I think about energy, you can quantify like how much effort is going into a theme of work. So if you have a whole bunch of different teams, some in Jira, some in Asana, some in Trello, or different areas working on different projects, well, it's often very hard to understand how those things come together. We were talking to a chief product officer the other day who, it's a goal-driven organization, but oftentimes, a company's OKRs don't, OKRs are great for managing kind of big strategic direction and measuring and delivering kind of accountability, particularly reporting to bosses and to the board and investors. What they're not great at, and where there's this kind of disconnect, is like what's actually happening on the ground. It's this kind of maker versus manager problem. And what we're trying to do is kind of help dovetail some of those things. So as an example, talking to his chief product officer the other day and going through some of the themes that we found, they have an OKR about expanding into new geographies. Well, what work is happening to drive that is a question that's very hard to answer without a lot of meetings and tracking spreadsheets and this and that. Well, we've found you can find patterns of language in their systems that say, like, the word Vietnamese was all over the place. And you can see how many people are working on things related to Vietnamese, how much time is being put against that. how much code is being pushed against that, how many, you know, story points, or like all these different factors go into kind of the algorithm to calculate, you know, energy. But you can show Vietnamese is a cluster, is a concept that's happening throughout these systems, and you can show like its weighting versus you know, improving the onboarding flow was 10x what improving the onboarding flow is, right? So the question that a leader should ask themselves is that the right balance, right? Is my organization kind of balanced in the right way? We've seen other times where themes kind of splinter, where you start getting Vietnamese improving onboarding flow, UI improvements, DevOps, rebuild back end to better enable project, you know, X. And that kind of scattering over time is a good indicator of kind of losing focus. But it's very hard to see any of that in quarterly kind of OKR reporting, right? So the question is like, how do you see that now? Well, today you rely on people, you rely on tracking spreadsheets, but even those aren't really like at the thematic level. So I think technology has progressed to the point where organizations should have a sense of what we're talking about, like where their organization is focused, without having to spend hours and hours. I mean, managers literally spend 8 to 10 hours a week just crafting various reports for people above them, and it just keeps going on and on and on, right? So there's this kind of underlying management tax that organizations, is just this load-bearing cost that organizations have because of this lack of visibility. And I think you can solve that.
Yeah.
It's a hard problem.
Yeah.
Are you finding it's interesting with everything through COVID, you know, from what we've seen, a lot of companies are pivoting, trying to find out where their energy is going, right? And then ultimately having to pivot to probably the highest priorities or something that maybe they weren't thinking about. Are you seeing through your company an increased interest in you, an increased search for you, or what are you seeing, you know, in the COVID world?
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, COVID's a good example. I was speaking with also as a chief product officer at an organization relatively recently still. It's a decent sized company, a couple thousand people, and they had, you know, 4 big initiatives happening in response to COVID. And the CEO asked this product officer, was like, hey, like, where do we stand on all this stuff? And it took the guy 2 days to go figure it out. And he even has 2 people whose full-time job, kind of product ops, right? Like full-time job it is to kind of parachute into various teams, kind of choose which stand-ups to join and like get the status of everything and kind of report. That really just shouldn't be necessary. It should be pretty obvious what's happening in an organization, and it's hard. It's hard as companies get bigger. So yeah, alignment is a massive challenge for companies, and that visibility breaks down as you go up an organization. And I think there's massive need. So we definitely get a response. Yeah. I think that the challenge for us has been like abstracting, like kind of translating, as you can imagine, you know, the language and things being used in systems like Jira and Asana are very often very technical, or not even necessarily like, I don't mean technical as in, you know, but it's often like engineering speak or marketing speak. But the goal here is to be able to abstract and kind of translate that so that you make those systems legible across an organization, kind of up and across an organization. So anybody can see like, oh, this team is all these people are working on Vietnamese translation. Well, that can show up in a lot of different ways inside of a system. So creating that kind of translation layer, and then getting it to be abstracted at the right layer, at the right level, to actually show business level insights for leadership and not just feature level work is tricky.
Yeah.
So I think that's really where we're focused, is getting those themes to be abstract, translated and abstracted at the right level to be kind of business level insights.
Yeah. So even looking at your website, there were 4 words that I think were on the head, but it was lead more, manage less. And I'm interested to know, through the companies that have started using Mighty Labs, and like, what are you seeing as a result, as far as some of the, as far as the, I guess, is it time saved for managers? Are you seeing people, like the makers, the people doing the work, are you seeing them more aligned? Are you even seeing, maybe, and I'm not sure if you have this insight, but are you seeing quicker pivots, or more frequent pivots, change of initiatives or themes of work more often?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're still pretty early, but gathering a
Yeah.
lot of those types of anecdotes now. But I think what you see is time saved is one. But to me, that's kind of there's real ROI there, no doubt. But the higher order problem you're solving is enabling conversations to happen much sooner, right? So to go back to our example, like, is Vietnamese translation, should that be sucking up 60% of engineering and products energy? Like, is that right? So enabling those really rapid course corrections, and just kind of this kind of learning loop. So OKRs really aren't the learning loops that organizations need. And so what we're trying to do is create this kind of constant learning loop for an organization, so that leaders can, we talked about purpose earlier. And I mentioned that purpose should be this kind of ultimate, kind of constant check, and balance against any project that's happening, or any new initiative. Well, I think Mighty kind of serves that purpose in creating this information flow and this visibility that enables leadership to have those conversations earlier and faster, and constantly kind of be course correcting, as opposed to like bigger chunks of time going by, right? Where at the end of a quarter, you all come back and report on some OKR, although that's great and it's super important. But what happened in those 3 months, leading up to that? And what about kind of just week to week? Can you get this briefing that enables people to course correct much faster? Definitely is, time saver, in the sense that maybe you can skip a meeting or two this week because you already have the information. But maybe you make better choices about where you spend your time.
Yeah.
And instead of asking managers, right, to like sit and fill out these reports, sorry, lights went off. Fill out these reports. They spend so much time every week doing that. Mighty's goal is to capture that information already and save that person's time. Managers should spend as much time coaching and developing people as they are reporting, right? It's a fixed pie. Time is fixed, as much as we don't want it to be.
Yeah, no, I love that, Josh. I mean, it seems this is a really great area of like real-time insights, right? Because even if there are many organizations that don't, they have annual planning, they don't have iterative planning, major problem. Some don't have a way of seeing their OKRs across teams, major problem. But even a company that has both of those in place, this allows day-to-day, week-to-week insights about where people, where themes are going, or new trends. It could be customer insights they're gaining, right? And you start to see certain themes come out from certain teams around what they're hearing from customers, for example, allowing them to have, like you said, critical conversations, maybe important pivots.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I think our biggest, given the work we're doing around language and themes, probably the biggest request we get is, can you point your algorithms, like your thematic kind of language work? Can you point that at all of my customer emails? Can you point that at all the notes we take in Salesforce? Because we're taking unstructured data, right? Like, it's not, the energy calculation is both uses counts against verbiage and language, but it also uses very structured data, because there's a lot of, pointing and all sorts of things that happen inside of agile teams. But thematically, what a lot of people want is, like, the question they want to answer is, like, what should we build? What are our best ideas? Where should we focus? So here it's kind of this alignment between research and development. So we've kind of tackled the D side, right? Like, here's what work is happening to drive, your purpose as an organization. But aligning with customers is just as important as aligning, internally. So there's kind of this internal versus external alignment. And, I don't know if or when we'll get to that, but, the thing is, like, the best ideas and customer feedback and the themes of those ideas, and you shouldn't just be connected through serendipity, right? Like, this salesperson happened to hear this and they try to communicate to product about it, but it's very anecdotal. How many other people have said that? Well, you don't really know, because it's just one salesperson or one CS, right? So how often is that feature or that problem being expressed by customers? Like, those questions come up quite a bit too. It's like, what is the thematic direction that we're being asked to go as well?
It's not to say that business wouldn't get there in the end, right? But this is all about speed.
Maybe too late, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Too late. Like, the world is just innovating too fast. Like, if you can't have sort of a responsive organization to your customers, it's not just what you are building, it's what you should be. And you have to be paying attention to those themes, right?
Yeah. I think there's certainly some powerful, benefits from seeing what the employees, what the colleagues are really working on and thinking about and innovating. But the customer,
what you can imagine in the future, right, is the same system that's kind of pointed at all that customer feedback and all those Salesforce notes and all those, maybe intercom, but pulling out the themes against that and kind of directly drawing lines or showing breakages between, like, what you're hearing and what you're actually working on. Like, how aligned is that? And that's the question.
A really great example of that this year, I think, in companies is, let's say, for example, just the area and significant and important area of Black-owned businesses, for example. People want to figure out, well, how do we serve that particular, customer in a different way and in a more meaningful way. And so people are, I guess the platform is trying to listen, right, and observe. Well, what are people talking about? What type of questions are they entering into their design sprints? What ifs? Just to speed up that process, what are the people saying on the ground? What are our Black customers actually saying about our products or about products they don't have that they wish they had? And you're talking about getting I suppose longer term to a place where you've validated with employees, you've validated with customers, and you're getting to decision making much quicker in areas that are important.
Yeah. I mean, we're like riffing, at this point. Which is cool. I'm into it. But I think yeah, there are signals all over an organization as to where they're focused, and language is a big part of that. Our if focusing on Black-owned businesses, to use your example, is a really important theme for an organization this quarter. I don't know how often is that being talked about. Is it actually a focus, or are we just kind of like paying lip service to it? Those are hard questions to answer.
Yeah.
And
I was just gonna say that I think it's interesting because you definitely mentioned language a couple times and translation a couple times. I even saw that on your website as well, and that's what it feels like. It's this I don't want to say like this purpose translator, but like this idea of translating the customer needs into these actionable themes or these target areas, and then you're translating what the work is going back up to that, and like from what I've seen, like just that simple translation into a language that anybody can understand and read and relate to, like I can imagine saves a ton of time. But
we're getting there. I mean, it's a super gnarly problem.
Yeah.
I didn't, I mean, look, it's funny when you get into product and you start talking to customers, and we have been for a few years now, like you see a lot of white space. Like there's so much opportunity out there to solve really interesting problems, and some of them are not easy. Nothing's easy, like make sure that's clear. But there are plenty of problems out there that you could tackle relatively quickly, but I find for myself, like the gnarlier the problem, kind of the more interesting. And I think that's the venture to really generate real venture returns. I mean, like the really hard, gnarly problems.
Is it?
And like, you may not be able to do it, but like I think those are the problems worth tackling, whether it's workplace alignment, purpose, or climate change. I think there's really big problems out there, and the future looks very different. It should look different than it does today.
Yeah, I like that, the gnarly challenges. Like so I can relate to that. I think that's a motivating thing, right? I think it's going to keep you motivated for a longer period of time. I think when it's a bigger problem to solve. What else kind of motivated you or still motivates you around what Mighty Lab is trying to do, other than it's a big challenge, but what about like the core problem that I think you got attached to originally, maybe even motivated you to focus on this specific problem when there's all those other problems out there?
Yeah, I've always been motivated by problems that are kind of related to humans, I guess. Like I think in this regard, like we've talked a lot about the organizational problem, and problems for leadership. But as I mentioned before, like to me, this is a very long-term play here. Is it meaning like if you can capture and understand how and where like kind of value is being created in an organization, if you can start there and get that, then you can start to channel and actually put people or recommend people go into the right places at the right time to to achieve their purpose. And so like my long-term goal here really is very much human driven, but you have to start, and that's kind of measuring and understanding how value is created, and then you can start to kind of channel that. So like I still find myself very motivated and thinking daily about, and product team is constantly like reining me back, but like I'm still very motivated by the human problem here, which is that we spend so much of our life working. Understanding how to deploy your highest and best self at work is hard, and I think super important. And I think that AI can augment that ability in the future, where so many things are kind of automated, that people can be freed up to do their best work, creative work. And so that's the long-term, that's the long-term goal. And that's why I remain kind of human motivated.
I mean, Josh, you probably have other questions. I'm super interested in this area, but like, where did that come from, that interest? How far back can you kind of relate to like seeing that as a problem or an opportunity you wanted to solve?
It's a good question. Kind of trying to really rapidly psychologize my childhood. I don't know. I mean, I remember, I don't know. I think in many efforts even as a child, probably, whether it's sports teams or elsewhere, I probably had patterns like this pop up. But I remember thinking really deeply about it when, out of college, it sounds like completely unrelated, but I was in investment banking, and people don't really think about it this way, but banking, investment banking is a services organization, right? So, they don't use this language, but it's really just like highly dynamic, really fluid teams that get together around various projects, right? It's like you spin up a team around this M&A deal, you spin up a team around this equity deal, you spin up a team around this pitch or this client opportunity, whatever it is. And these teams are constantly coming together and going apart, right? And as I became more and more senior, I ended up managing, an entire group of junior folks, right out of college, right out of business school. And it was my job to kind of staff people to projects. And, engagement, I think, was low, turnover was high. And I tried to figure out new ways of doing that in ways that aligned with, very few people go into banking with a passion for finance. They go there to learn something really specific. And so, I interviewed folks and tried to figure out what they really wanted to learn. I even had a sheet of things they were supposed to learn over the 2 years or 3 years or whatever of the program. And tried to start building teams with those things in mind, and I think people just engage deeper at work when they're motivated by learning and creativity and kind of more aligns with their purpose, right? And so I think that's where it kind of really landed. I was like, okay, if you can organize in this way, in it, while remaining aligned to the actual work that needs to be done, it's better for the individual. They're more engaged, they're learning more, they feel more fulfilled, and you're achieving the goals of the organization. That's that alignment that I'm talking about, that I think is possible. Services is a little bit different, though, than what I call, product companies, which have, aren't as transactional, meaning that they have longer term goals, longer term, initiatives they're trying to create. So it works a little bit differently, but the goal is the same. But you kind of first have to understand the work that's being done, needs to be done, and create that visibility first, as we talked about, and then you can kind of go into channeling people in ways that matter.
Well, I find that super motivating, though, that's your long-term play, though. And I think that even this year has emphasized, and the next many years has emphasized that, people the fact that you can work anywhere, and millions of people will be working not from their offices anymore, in big companies especially. Those teams can be, you can move teams around and individuals around much more easily, right? They don't have to move to a new country or a new state. If their passion, and I think you're talking about purpose, passion, skills, maybe all of those things, and matching them to where they can make the maximum contribution. Good for business, good for customers, good for the individual human, right? I find that pretty motivating. That's your.
Yeah, I do too. The trick is that the stability, the kind of the operational stability of an organization. Like you have companies who operate this way already, right? Like very, whether it's call it holacracy or adhocracy or all these very fluid organizations out there. It's a small market right now. And so like introducing any risk to kind of the stability of teams is not a massive play right now. But so that's why we kind of had to back into where to tackle the problem first is around alignment. And then you can start like improving things on the edges and then go deeper and deeper. I think the world will get there.
Yeah.
Well, so we talked about this a little bit before the podcast. Something that maybe some people don't know about you is, from 13 to 18, you worked at a sawmill, and I find that interesting, and I wonder if you can kind of talk to us about why you were working at a sawmill, and how you then left the sawmill to go to school and eventually lead on to
it wasn't really my choice at the time. I don't think. Like as I mentioned to you before, like I really vividly remember, I think I was around 12, and my dad came home from work early. I remember where I was sitting in the house. It was unusual, like 3 or whatever in the afternoon, and he walks in. And tells me, I quit my job today and I'm starting a company. And I really vividly remember that. And not really knowing what that meant or the risk he was taking at the time or any of those things. I think it was a formative experience. And, I don't think I thought about it that way at the time, but looking back, I do. And, he was in the lumber trade and he started a sawmill and it became, duty bound kid at the time to help wherever I could. And, in those very early days, it was, middle of winter, like, welding, helping build machines to, in the hot summer, stacking lumber and pulling lumber and like, doing all the things that happen in a lumber plant. And, it was super hard work. And I think I learned a lot. I mean, those watching him try to build this company and be on the brink a few times, and kind of understanding, I think, the effort that goes into that and the passion that goes into it, and how much he cared about people and seeing that daily, right? Like, because I was there. It also taught me that I think the value of college and like that I didn't really, want to work. I was in the front lines, right? I mean, like the lowest person on the totem pole in that lumber plant for most of my childhood. And I think I realized I wanted something different than that too, which probably was helpful, but it taught me a lot about work, hard work. And, it was a good experience in that.
Yeah, I love that. Do you have kids?
I do. I have 3 little girls.
Are you when they're ready, are you going to put them to work at Mighty Labs and teach them?
We all started sawmill.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't. Yeah. I mean, actually, I talk to them quite a bit about what I'm doing. I talk to them about my fears. I develop this. I mean, they don't know everything I know about the pressure I feel and stress, but I try to communicate a lot about those things to them, and you know, part of it is just so they know, like, look, take big risks, take risk. I'm doing something that I think is important. I talk a lot about passion and purpose and the fear that I feel and the, you know, and I do try to get involved. One of my little girls is a kind of a budding artist, and I'll, you know, she likes design, so I'll give her a little project of something to create, and she'll, you know, I'll be like, give me 10 revs of this, and she'll come back with 10 different designs of, you know, some little button or some, you know, caricature or something like that. And I'll be like, cool, give me 10 more. And we'll start going through and circling the ones we like and talking about why. So I don't know, I guess on some level, I try to get them involved, whether it's just kind of understanding the emotional fortitude, the grit that has to go into taking risk, the importance of passion, and then some actual projects, I guess, here and there. None of her stuff has made it into the product. But I think they enjoy being, I think, involved.
Yeah. The fear, I'm sure, like, I'm interested in that. Like, is there anything that you're uniquely scared about beyond just entrepreneurship, anything within the world of Mighty Labs or what you guys are trying to tackle, anything that you're trying to push through right now? I don't know.
Yeah, you know, so many things I think are hard, and you know, making sure that you build the right product and have the right team around you is a lot harder than it sounds. You know, you can have a vision in mind, and team is everything. It really is. And I think being able to move fast enough in a focused enough way and build the right thing, there's a lot that has to come together for that. And it's just so much harder than I think people realize.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said at the top, like I mean, like I watched my father create a business, right? Even then, you know, I'm young and stupid. Like I didn't, while I heard it, looking back now, I can see the patterns of pressure and stress and hard work. But I don't think you can really appreciate it until you try to do it, right? And I think and so like I said at the top, like I don't care if it's a lemonade stand, a sawmill, or a software company, like full respect to anybody that gives something a shot.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I think we could probably try to wrap up on that note. I
Yeah.
think that's pretty uplifting. I feel it. I think I can definitely relate to, I think, the challenge of, you know, I can definitely get passionate and feel purpose around certain things, but it's a question of, well, is this the thing that the world wants right now? That's so, you know, I don't know. It disconcerts me a little bit, right? I think, and I think a lot of other people could potentially relate to that as well. But I love the idea of just, you know, tackling big challenges, and it's cool to see what you're doing, and see how that connects back to individuals within organizations then going off and tackling big challenges as well, because they see how that connects back to, I think, you know, ultimately what the company's trying to achieve. And I don't know, it kind of all comes full circle, and I think it's pretty cool. But anyway, any last questions, Spencer? Anything else that you want to say?
Is there any book that you can recommend to our listeners based on the types of things you've been talking about, or the things that have helped you, you know, leading into 2021?
You know, I read stuff that people probably aren't that interested in. I mean, I guess there's a leadership book that I feel really strongly about. But like I spend I spend a lot of time. I don't even know why. Like I find most business books that I read are, 250 pages, and they should be like 25.
Mm-hmm.
You can get value, but it's like it's hard to like pick your spots. So I still find myself, my undergrad was in philosophy, so I still find myself like revisiting some of those thinkers, and but once in a while there are books that pop out. I think there's actually a company in Utah. It was written by a company in Utah, but I think the book Leadership and Self-Deception. I don't know if you guys have heard about that, but there's it's around culture and leadership, and I think one reason I like it a lot is because I think there's some philosophical underpinnings there that I think are really important, and that is really treating others as humans, not objects. And I think that's fundamental to being a human, but especially being a leader of an organization. Like I have a hard and fast rule here. Like given the space we're in, you hear the word resources come up a lot, right? And like we do not call people resources here, and I think understanding that is really important. And I think that's a good book. I think that talks about organizational, cultural alignment, and treating others as humans.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great stuff. Have you ever heard of Chasing Confidences or Chasing Confidence by Nate Walkinshaw?
Yeah, I know Nate.
You know,
Well,
Nate, what? He may have recommended it. We speak to you. We can't remember. He was our first guest. And we've known him for a few years, but he was, yeah, he's a great guy.
He's been a help. And, when I first moved to Utah, I moved here from San Francisco a couple of years ago. And I can't remember who introduced us, but somebody said, like, within the first week or two I moved here, they're like, the guy you got to meet is Nate Walkinshaw. And he's great, very smart.
Good stuff. Can you let us, our listeners know how they can contact you or your company?
Yeah, you just shoot me a note anytime. Brent at mightylabs.com.
Fantastic. Josh,
I've been through some hard things and changes in product, and come from a different industry, and we've had some organizational challenges. I had a co-founder pass away along the way, and I think there's a lot to talk about trying to build something from scratch and dealing with challenges. So I think mental health is a big passion of mine too. People need to reach out. Like, I think getting through hard things takes a village. So feel free.
Excellent. Yeah, great insights, and we'd love to talk to you again and see how your journey continues to progress and develops. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for hanging out with us. We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Swell Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast, sign up to our newsletter at theswellpod.com, and get in on the conversation through all major socials at The Swell Pod. We'll see you next time.